Hi friends. So today I want to do a video about the benefits of being vegan. I guess it'll be a part one video because in my experience and from everyone I've talked to, there are many benefits about being vegan or going vegan. So here, first maybe I should talk about the difference between plant-based and vegan. I'm sure, or I would imagine that most people watching this will understand the distinction, but when people say that they're plant-based, they usually mean that they eat like a vegan does. They eat in a plant-based manner. So their diet is made of plants. Or maybe they mean that they're 90% plants and that they eat eggs sometimes or something like that. But generally, a plant-based diet is a vegan diet without any animal products, of course. Meat, dairy, fish, seafood, eggs, butter, milk, etc. Bee pollen, honey are considered animal products, but I know plenty of people who consider themselves vegan that eat those last two. Anyway, so that would be plant-based, and of course, veganism, I guess, I'm probably not going to nail a perfect definition, but veganism is generally a ideology which seeks to, as much as practical or possible, eliminate the use of animal products. That means their consumption, but also the use in daily life. So someone who is strictly vegan would probably not use leather products or wear furs or something like that. But I don't think there are not as many insanely militant vegans or people that want to draw really hard lines. There aren't that many people that consider themselves vegans that would, excommunicate you or say that you're not a vegan because you don't follow a very strict way of living. Like, I'm sure there's, I believe there's tiny sea creatures and diatomaceous earth in hardwall and stuff, and vegans are not going to necessarily tell you you're not vegan if you don't live in a house that doesn't use drywall or something. And anyway, you get the idea. It's a square rectangle thing. Every vegan is plant-based, but not every plant-based person is a vegan. Much like every square is a rectangle, but not every rectangle is a square. Only special types of rectangles are squares. Anyway, I gotta love the 4th grade geometry. At any rate, there are many benefits that I've discovered and that I've enjoyed being vegan. And today I want to talk about and again, these are not in any particular order. It's not like this is the most important point, the most important benefit, and that the ones coming will descend in importance or anything like that. This is more, as I think about them and want to share them, I'll just record videos, and this will be part one. Okay, so the first benefit I want to talk about is that being vegan brings you much closer to animals. Now, I know very few people who don't love animals. Almost everyone loves some animals, maybe just dogs or cats, or dogs and cats, or they have a favorite animal or something like that. I know some people that hate particular animals. Like, I work with someone that likes most animals, but not frogs or snakes. And she actually has a pretty good reason for not liking frogs, somewhat traumatic experience, which I can have sympathy for, rather, but I love frogs a lot. So I don't agree with that or anything. There isn't any animal that I don't love. But I've made peace with a lot of them throughout my life. For instance, making peace with spiders was an interesting moment for me. But anyway, being vegan brings you a lot closer to the animals. When you stop consuming all animal products and maybe you're at a grocery store and you start looking at cosmetics like shampoo and always choose one, or decide to choose one that's cruelty-free, wasn't tested on animals, something along those lines. When you start making those commitments, you become a completely different person in a lot of ways. It changes your life in a lot of little ways that accumulate to being a very different experience of reality. When you commit to when you commit to certain restrictions on your behavior, you actually exist in a different universe because of how you perceive reality changes. So for me, a really stark example of this was many years ago when I was experimenting with veganism and had been doing it for a year or two. I remember walking through this grocery store and I got to the meat section and I felt like I was walking through a morgue. And it was kind of weird because it was very bizarre, actually, because I kind of forgot what I was doing. I was just, absent-mindedly going through the grocery store, and then all of a sudden I had this sort of like, touch of death, cradle of the grave kind of feeling. And I, looked up and I realized like, oh, I'm just surrounded by all these, from my perspective, dead bodies. And it's just it's the viscerality, the visceralness of it that was so memorable for me. If you had never decided, I'm going to stop eating animals and I'm going to stop using their products as much as possible, if you hadn't made that decision, then this experience would never occur to you. That's what I mean about existing in a completely different universe. Now, in the similar way, when you have been vegan for a while and you walk around the world, you walk through the world, when you see animals, you will regard them as friends and not food. And I'm sure some of you or most of you have seen bumper stickers that say that, like, they're friends, not food. And that is really powerful, because you'll walk past animals like squirrels or something, and I've heard people say things like, oh, they're nasty tree rats and stuff, and they're kind of, my thought is always like, well, rats are pretty cool too, so that's all right. But but anyway, let's see, you walk past squirrels and all of a sudden they feel closer to you. And of course, before I even knew what veganism was, I was always a big fan of dogs and cats and fish and just pets that people had. There's really awesome, entertaining, interesting beings to share your life with. But when I went vegan, I started paying more attention. I started attending more to every animal that I saw, whether it was like birds and cardinals, or different kinds of birds like cardinals, or some of the robins I've been seeing around here. You know it's spring when you see robins around, even though it's kind of deep in spring at this point. They came late this year. Anyway, so you find yourself in a completely different universe where every animal that you see is a potential friend, or that's where you start from. You start from them from this perspective of friendship, as opposed to having this larger distance. And like when I see a cow, for instance, I don't think of a cow as food or potential food. I wonder whether people who aren't vegan feel that way if they see a cow and they think about hamburgers. Maybe. I'm trying to think if I ever thought in that way. But it is a completely different universe, because when you start paying attention to animals more and more deeply, you realize something about them. You realize that every animal is way more intelligent than you realized, way more sensitive, way more, or possessing of way more capacities. This one time when I was staying with my parents in Massachusetts, they had neighbors who had pet rabbits, and they were going on a trip or something, and they wanted someone to take care of the rabbits. And I had never even heard of keeping rabbits as pets inside your house, but I had pet sit for people in a lot of other contexts. So I was like, yeah, sure, I'll pet sit your rabbits, that's great. And I went over there, and they had these two rabbits that they basically had sequestered into one big room, and they didn't really like lock them in there or anything. It was more that there was like a nice carpet that the rabbits liked to be on, and they didn't like to hop around the rest of the house because it was like cold tile or something. I think that was their logic, the rabbits' logic, that is. Anyway, so I watched these rabbits for a couple of days and totally fell in love with them. I didn't realize how friendly and loving. Oh man, I miss one of them a lot, Mr. Tibbets, Mr. T. It's a great rabbit. But this happens with wild animals too. They actually had a book in the house too that explained how if you let rabbits out of a clutch and into your house to free roam and whatnot, then their personalities blossom. It's much like when you have a human inside like a cell. They're not going to really open up to you and show you who they are. You have to give them some degree of freedom, if possible, so that they can blossom into a companion of some sort, a potential companion. That's how animals are. So I've discovered some really incredible things about animals by being vegan through the process of paying more attention to them. For instance, I talk about squirrels a lot just because there's a ton, everyone has squirrels everywhere they are. So many varieties, they're all awesome. But when you pay attention to squirrels and you watch them, you realize all kinds of things about them, how playful they are, how intelligent they are, how complex their emotional life is. And not everyone likes the idea of feeding wild animals, but if you start feeding squirrels, you'll realize that they have all kinds of different personalities, because some will maybe they're like the cognitive outlier squirrels who are willing to take risks, like risk-taking humans, but some of the squirrels will come to get the food that you feed them quite quickly. Other ones will stay away from you, and it'll take a lot of time to crack that nut if you want to become friends with them. But really, that's how I view every animal that I interact with, is that they're friends, they're potential friends. And I think that pretty much every vegan feels this way. Yeah, and there's a lot more to be said about this. This connects in with Buddhist concepts of karma and reincarnation. It is a deep subject, actually. Your relationship with animals becomes a huge source of meaning and value for your life. And I still love dogs and cats. They all have kind of the way we've co-evolved with them is special. But now I see myself as a steward for all animal species on the planet. And as much as possible, I want to be completely non-threatening to them. And if possible, to help them. If I'm at the beach and I see a fish that's stranded, I'm going to throw him back into the water. That's, to me, a very meaningful thing to do. So, of course, this is probably obvious, but the reason this is a benefit is, like I said, it makes your life more meaningful. It makes it gives you this huge value, this huge source of value for you to have. And kids like to do this too. I also like to kind of, when they think about it, they like to save animals and pick them up in a cup and take them outside. Pretty famous for doing that. I'm sure that all your vegan friends are famous for doing that too. But anyway, I'll leave it there for now. And I'm sure I'll touch more on this subject because it becomes a huge part of your life. It certainly has mine. But anyway, I hope you all are doing great, and I will be back with more, of course. Bye.